Joe Walsh here. Not wanting anybody in this country illegally, that doesn't make me a racist. That makes me an American. We'll talk about it when Freedom returns at 5.
Dan and Amy, and so, in recent weeks, we've talked about the Prager University lawsuit against YouTube for censoring Prager University videos. We've also talked about the stories with respect to Google and Facebook and how they boost certain content to the diminishment of other content. Now, this is all well within their rights as private enterprises, but the question becomes, with their market share and associated power, are Google and Facebook nearing the status of monopolies such that they're closing in on the threshold for antitrust prosecution by the federal government, a la AT&T, a la Microsoft? There's a very interesting discussion on this topic by Tyler Cohen, a George Mason University economist and the curator of Marginal Revolution blog, and Luigi Zingales, who is an economist at University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. He also co-hosts the Capital Isn't podcast. Two very provocative, innovative thinkers. And I got to say, since I don't believe in antitrust law either, I'm more on the Tyler Cohen side. But I'm no Tyler Cohen, so Luigi Zingales will have an easy time getting over on me. And we're pleased to have Luigi Zingales on the show right now. Professor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, tell us what your concern is about Facebook and Google and their market power.
So there are multiple. First of all, let's start from the fact Facebook and Google together represent 75% of the online ad in the world. So it is a oligopoly. And this oligopoly now has increasing barrier to entry because Google and Facebook are acquiring every potential threat to their dominance. And they have a gigantic stock of data that they accumulated by sort of ignoring the privacy of individuals. And that stock of data makes them almost unassailable from a threat point of view because the value of data is increasing with the data you have. And so that makes it difficult for a new entrant to challenge them. So while I don't see in this moment any burning evidence that they abuse that position, even if, for example, the European Union did find evidence of that and Google is under investigation, I think that there are concerns, and especially if we look retrospectively at some acquisitions, like the acquisition of WhatsApp by Facebook, they should have had much more serious review by the antitrust.
But why is data different than operating systems, different than phone systems, different than oil in terms of the concern? I mean, if Microsoft was going to take over the world, and then the world changed. Even in this space, MySpace was going to be the winner over Facebook, and obviously that didn't come to pass. So why is data and market dominance in data different than market dominance with respect to other previous goods?
So first of all, let's clarify that MySpace was at the beginning where the network externalities were not set up so strongly. And so at the beginning, there is more ability to compete. Now is seriously jeopardized. Second, of all the examples you made, except oil, all those tended to be monopolies that were destroyed by the intervention of the antitrust. If today we have Google and Facebook and not just Microsoft, is because in the late 90s there was a very serious antitrust investigation. If we have a variety of phone providers and not just AT&T, is because the antitrust forced AT&T to break up. So let's not assume that naturally these things happen. These things happen with the help of the antitrust.
Well, but just let's take the Microsoft case. Let me give me your assessment on this because, I look at everything like Frederick Bastiat from the eye of the consumer. Was the antitrust prosecution of Microsoft, was that a positive for the consumer at the end of the day?
Yes, it was, because what we don't fully understand, if we look just from a narrow, immediate consumer perspective, is what generates more innovation. And I think that the behavior of Microsoft at the time, that was copying and basically destroying all the competition, those who have more years like me remember that there was an Excel. There was a Lotus before Excel,
Yeah, right.
and a WordPerfect before Word, and then Dora before Outlook. All these companies were basically destroyed by Microsoft. That was jeopardizing investments of other companies in innovation. I think the antitrust slowed down the ability of Microsoft to monopolize contiguous markets, and gave the possibility to new startups like Google and Facebook to thrive. And now the table has turned. At some point, Microsoft was a startup itself. And I think that yesterday's startup are today's monopolies. And the function of a good market is to curb today's monopoly, to give space for the future startups.
So what about, Google and Facebook, obviously the price for using both of those is zero, but there is a risk of their dominance in the effect of our political system, especially when we look at the last election. Is there any way to stop that from happening in future elections?
Actually, I disagree with the fact that the price is zero. We pay with data. We pay basically with our blood, and most of us don't understand it, or they don't have a choice. And I think that that's part of the problem. So in this respect, the European Union is more advanced than the United States, in part because it's less controlled by the political power of the big tech, and they have better data to protect the privacy of the individual, making data portable from one institution to another. So I think that this is a very important step, because I am concerned, like you are, of the potential role that Facebook or Google can have in any presidential election. The concern, however, is how do you address this? Because I'm not so trusting that the government would do the right thing, or that you can solve police, etc. The best potential remedy is competition. So we need to create the conditions to have challengers to Google and Facebook. And one idea is the one that I advanced in a New York Times article with Guy Romick, a colleague at Chicago, of making the social graph portable, so that it's easier for new startups to challenge Facebook. And the directive of the European Union that makes data more private and portable goes in that direction.
I wanted you said in your back and forth with Tyler Cohen that you're not suggesting that Facebook and Google are monopolies at this point in terms of should they be subject to antitrust prosecution. So for you, what's the indication that they've that the tripwire has been triggered and that they are in that place, AT&T, Microsoft, where they should be broken up, as it were?
So I think that what we need to do is collect evidence. You don't start an antitrust case simply based on a concern. From a market share point of view, they certainly have a dominant market share, but in the United States, having a dominant market share per se is not ground for prosecution on antitrust grounds. You have to see evidence that there is abuse of that position. Now, what is interesting is a few years back, under the Obama administration, the FTC did do an analysis of Google, and the Economist suggested that there was ground for prosecution, but the Commission decided not to proceed. So, and the European Union did find ground to proceed. So I think that what we need at this point is a serious analysis and a serious debate. I'm the last one to say we should jump the gun, but I think that being sort of Panglossian and say that we live in the best possible world and nothing should be done is dangerous as well.
This is why I like Professor Zingales. You get a Voltaire reference when you talk to him. Professor, just kind of generally speaking, philosophically speaking, do you think that the greater threat to competition is the rent-seeking behavior of the big players in different sectors and them capturing agencies that regulate them, using the government as a sword or shield? Or is it that these natural monopolies that occur and dominate and exercise disproportionate influence, um, uh, and thus need to be regulated through antitrust? Is it the rent-seeking behavior, or is it government oversight that is the greater concern when it comes to competitive environment?
I think it's the combination of the two. I think that every firm tries to achieve a monopoly to make more profits, and I think that in a sense is normal. What is not normal is that the government is aiding and abetting this effort. I am a big fan of the only Italian economist of the 20th century was Luigi Zingales, and he was saying that the goal of the role of the government is to level the daily trenches that business put to protect themselves against competition. So there is an active role for government, and this active role would be to favor competition. Unfortunately, we see the government more involved in reducing competition rather than favoring it.
He is Luigi Zingales. He's economist at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, co-host of the Capital Isn't podcast, and also his book. I don't know if you've got a new one out, but I read your book, Capitalism for the People, that was a few years back, which was a good read. I didn't agree with some of it, but very provocative, very well reasoned. So I'd recommend that. And if you've got anything else to promote, please do.
No, thank you. But I would love people to listen to the podcast and give me feedback.
All right. Capital Isn't is the podcast. He is Luigi Zingales, at Zingales on Twitter. Professor Zingales, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.